The creation story. Imagine nothing. No friends, no pets, no green grass to play on. In fact, not even ground for the grass to grow on. No colors, no light, just nothing. But in the midst of this nothingness, there was God. And he looked out into the dark nothingness and he said, "Let there be light." And there was light. He saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness, creating both day and night. Then he took the water, and he put water above and created clouds, and then he put water below, creating seas with a sky in between, and he saw that it was good. Then he gathered the seas together, and he created land out of the sea, and he saw that it was good. Then he looked at the land and said, "Let there be green, let there be life, let plants grow." And he created trees, bushes, flowers, and grass. Then he looked at the skies and he said, "Let there be lights in the sky, a great light in the day." And he created the sun. And another light at night. And he created the moon and the stars. And he said, "This is good." Then he looked at the seas and said, "Let there be life. Let there be fishes to swim, whales to sing, and dolphins to play." And it was so. And he looked at the skies once more, and he said, "Let there be life. Let there be birds to fly, whistle, and sing." And it was so. And he said, "This is good." Then he looked at the land, and he said, "Let there be life. Let there be monkeys to swing in the trees. Let there be deers to run in the forest. Let there be bunnies to hop on the ground." And it was so. And on the land God created the animals, and he said, "It is good." Then, saving the best for last, he created man in his own image. In his own likeness, he created both man and woman. And he said to them, "I give you all this that is good. I give you the fish in the seas, the birds in the air, the plants and animals on the ground, all for you to take care of." And then God looked at his beautiful creation, the man and woman in the garden, all the fish in the sea, birds in the air and animals in the ground. And he rested and said, "This is good." Have you ever had someone try to talk you into doing something that you knew was wrong? Well, something similar happened to both Adam and Eve soon after God created the garden. You see, when God was making the Garden of Eden, he planted 2 trees in it. One tree had fruit that would give you life, but the other tree had fruit that would give you death. It was known as the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You see, Adam and Eve only knew the good that God created. But this tree would also give them the knowledge of evil, pain, suffering, and eventually death. Now, God wanted Adam and Eve to trust him, so he gave them only one rule. Don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or you will die. One day, when they were in the garden, they met a snake. Now this snake was the enemy of God. He wanted to destroy all the good that God made. So he tempted them and convinced them to eat the fruit of the forbidden tree. They did what they knew was wrong, and for the first time, they sinned. They ate the fruit and suddenly felt naked, vulnerable, and ashamed. Soon after that, they heard God coming to hang out with them. But instead of the usual joy and excitement of talking with their Creator, they were covered with fear and resentment. So they hid. When God found them and asked them what they did, they didn't repent. They didn't say they are sorry. Instead, they blamed one another for their own sin. God's heart was broken. The best part of his creation rejected him. Adam and Eve brought evil into the garden. God's creation was no longer the good he created. It had become corrupted. The children he made would now face evil, pain, and suffering instead of the joy and bliss of the garden. However, God made a plan. He set in motion a plan to save men from their own evil. He made a promise that one day a king would come and defeat the evil snake and save mankind. Have you ever seen someone with something that you really wanted? Maybe they are loved by others, or have better grades, or just have cooler stuff. Sometimes it's easy to become jealous of that person, or even to wish that they would go away so that you could look better. If you remember the story of Adam and Eve, they had 2 sons who had a similar issue. Cain, the oldest, and Abel, the youngest. Now, because they no longer lived in the garden, they had to work really hard for their food. Cain learned how to work the soil and grow crops of many kinds, while Abel, he learned how to tend sheep. Abel trusted God and wanted to thank God for providing for him. So one day, he decided to give his very best to God. He went to his flock and he picked out the very best lamb he could find to give to God. In those days, when people wanted to give something to God, they would pile up a lot of stones on top of each other and burn the thing that they wanted to give to God on top of the stones. This was called a sacrifice. So that's just what Abel did. In faith that God would provide for him, he gave his very best to God, and God accepted his sacrifice. Cain, he also made a sacrifice to God. Maybe he just gave something to God because he saw his brother doing it. Maybe he did it for the sake of tradition. Or possibly he just wanted to look good in front of his family. Instead of giving his best, maybe he just gave whatever he had left over. Either way, Cain gave a sacrifice to God as well, but God did not accept his sacrifice. Cain became angry with both God and his brother, and God asked him, "Why are you angry? Do what is right. Trust me with your best. However, if you do not do what is right, your anger will consume you, and it will lead you to evil. You will destroy those who are closest to you." Cain did not listen to God. He let his anger control him. He was overcome by jealousy of his brother. His corruption consumed him. So when he saw his brother in the field, he killed him. He murdered his brother that he once loved. Just as God found Adam and Eve after they sinned, God came to Cain after he sinned. Like Adam, Cain did not repent for killing his brother. Also, like Adam, Cain suffered because of his sin. He would become a wanderer, forever walking away from those around him. However, God did not abandon Cain. God gave him a mark to protect him, so that people would not kill him like he killed his brother. Imagine a world where everyone was evil all the time, where every action hurts, every thought kills, and every word harms. In this world, every desire of man's heart is evil and corrupt, determined to cause pain. If you upset your neighbor, they killed you. If your friend wants something that's yours, he takes it. This is the world that Noah found himself in. Noah trusted God even though he saw Cain's jealousy and rage spread. Like a virus, it infected everyone. The world God created as good became corrupted to the point where it could no longer be recognized. Love turned to hate. Peace to conflict. Freedom to slavery. Life to death. God decided that he needed to cleanse the earth and wash away the violence that man created. So the clouds will rain, covering the whole earth with water. This moment will judge every thief, sentence every liar, and destroy every murderer. However, Noah found favor with God. So God told Noah to build an ark, a great floating box, sort of like a boat. Noah trusted God and built the ark. He continued to work on the ark for many years, though he did not see any sign of the flood. Noah persevered, although his neighbors deteriorated into wickedness. When Noah finished, God sent every kind of animal to the ark. This way, Noah could renew the world after the old world was washed away. As Noah and his family walked into the finished ark, water fell from the sky. As God closed the doors of the ark and sealed them in so that they could be safe, the rivers rose. Soon, the nearby town was covered in water. Yet, it continued to rain. The hills and the mountains flooded, and the rain did not stop until the whole world was covered with water. Every wicked man died that day. Judgment fell on all the sin and corruption. The sickness of Cain was washed away in the flood. But because Noah and his family trusted God, they were saved. When the rain stopped and the waters receded, Noah thanked God for the new world, cleansed from the corruption that consumed it. God looked at Noah and promised that he would no longer send a flood to wash away the evil. Instead, he put a great bow in the sky, pointing towards heaven, because the time is coming when he would pay the price for man's evil himself. Sometimes I argue about who is better. Maybe you do this too. I'm better because I'm older, taller, or smarter. I am the greatest one here. Unfortunately, whenever I talk about how great I am, I also drive other people away, because I am also saying that they are insignificant when compared to me. The Bible tells us a story of people who did a similar thing. After Noah, all of his descendants came together to build a city. They found an open plain to build on, and they started making bricks. In the middle of the city, they began to build a huge tower. They wanted to reach the sky. If they could make it tall enough, everyone would notice how amazing they are, and they would be untouchable. Not even God would be able to touch them. In fact, they wanted others to see them as great as God. If you looked to see the stars that God hung in the sky, you would also see their tower and be reminded that they were as awesome as God. When you went outside to see the sunlight that God gives the earth, you would step into the tower's shadow and realize that they are great enough to block God's gifts. With their tower, they would even be able to withstand a flood. They would be invincible. God saw the arrogance in their hearts. He saw that they only worshipped and loved themselves. God knew that if they continued on this path, that they would be the same as the people in Noah's time, only thinking of themselves and hurting others. Instead of working for the good God created, like Cain, they will create pain for those around them. God decided that he did not want them to build a city on pride and watch them descend into wickedness. So he confused their speech. If a man said, "I'm the best," "You will never be as great as me," no one would understand his arrogant rantings. Because no one could understand their self-worship, they departed. There was no longer a reason for them to build a tower to show their greatness, since no one cared to listen to their babble. However, a time is coming when God will reunite all the people of the earth, not because of their own greatness, which leads to evil, but because they will see his greatness, which leads to good. There is a choice we must make every day, whether to have faith in God or only in ourselves. We can see this choice in each of the stories so far. People have had faith in themselves, then worshipped themselves, then caused pain, wickedness, and destruction. Or people trust in God, and He gives them unity, forgiveness, and salvation. After the Tower of Babel, there was a man named Abraham. Now Abraham lived in a city called Ur. Surrounded by his family, he was comfortable, and he knew what to expect each day. He could trust the city to give him safety, and he could trust the work of his own hands to give him food. And if something bad actually happened, he could trust in his family to take care of him. He also had God, but he didn't need much faith in Him, because everything was already taken care of. But then, the unexpected happened. One day, he was praying, and God spoke to him. God said, "Leave all of this. Leave your family. Leave your home. Leave everything you trust behind. And trust me instead. I will protect you. I will provide for you. I will take care of you. Have faith in me." So Abraham, he did the unexpected. He left. Abraham's nephew, named Lot, left with him. He left his family and his home. He left his security. He decided that he did not need to live for his own greatness, but he could live for God. He did not know what the future would hold anymore, but that was okay, because he knew that God promised to take care of him. His journey of trusting God rather than himself had just begun. It would be filled with unexpected turns, failures, sorrow. However, he already made the hardest choice, the choice to start trusting God. And God would be with him and help him throughout his journey. You can make almost anything with glue, scissors, and paper. Once I was a child and my mother asked me, "What are you doing?" Of course, I was making something awesome with glue and scissors, but I didn't say that. Instead, I lied. For some reason, I thought she would take my stuff away. I thought she would ruin my fun instead of encouraging my creativity. I had no reason to doubt and lie to my mom, but I did. Did you know that Abraham does the same thing in the Bible? If you remember, he trusts God and he leaves his home city with his beautiful wife Sarah. Unfortunately, soon after, they stop trusting God. When they arrive in Canaan, the land God told them to go to, they see nothing but wilderness. There was no rain in this land for some time, which gives nothing but dry streams. Plants cannot grow when the streams are dry. Animals cannot eat or drink if plants don't grow. So they leave. We call this famine. No rain, no plants, no animals, and no food. How can God take care of Abraham if there's nothing but famine? Maybe they can't count on God. If God asked them to go to a land with no food, maybe he can't be trusted. So, Abraham decides that he needs to take care of himself. He leaves the land that God asked him to go to. Instead, he goes to Egypt, where there's more food. However, in Egypt there is a great and powerful king called Pharaoh, who does whatever he likes. While walking to Egypt, Abraham becomes afraid. What if this Pharaoh wants Abraham's beautiful wife Sarah? He's the king of Egypt. He can just kill Abraham and take his wife. Abraham does not trust God to protect him, even though God promised to. With the fear growing, Abraham asks Sarah to pretend she's only his sister. Then the powerful Pharaoh will have no reason to kill Abraham. When they arrive in Egypt, Abraham's lie seems to work. Pharaoh notices that Sarah is beautiful, but instead of killing Abraham and taking Sarah away, Pharaoh gives Abraham gifts. Abraham is elated. His scheme not only saves his wife, but he is also becoming wealthy. Maybe he doesn't need to trust God. After all, it's his wit that got him the food, the wealth, and the safety. Why trust God and endure the hardship of famine when he can live like a king in Egypt? One day, while enjoying his wealth, Abraham hears Pharaoh's men knocking on his door. He opens it, thinking maybe they're here to bring me more gifts. Instead, they take Sarah away to Pharaoh's house. Pharaoh wants her to be his wife. Abraham's heart breaks. His wife, his beautiful Sarah, is being taken away from him. Trusting himself instead of God gave him wealth, but now his wife is gone. The one he cares about the most is taken from him. His heart sinks and he begins to cry. But God does not forget his promise to Abraham. God said he would protect Abraham and Sarah. God will keep his promise, even if Abraham doubts and lies. God is still true to his word. The guards lead Sarah to Pharaoh's palace, but everyone starts feeling ill. All the women in Pharaoh's household become sick. Worried about the people in his house, Pharaoh seeks help and God answers him. Pharaoh realizes he brought another man's wife into his house and immediately calls for Abraham. He says, "Why did you lie to me? She is your wife, not your sister. Your lies have brought sickness into my house." Abraham replies, "Sorry, I was afraid for my life. Forgive me." Then Pharaoh tells Abraham to leave his country. Again, Abraham and Sarah return to Canaan. Although it is barren at this time, Abraham decides to trust God to take care of him. The God who protected him in Egypt can provide for him in Canaan. He knows that God will be faithful even if he doubts. Do you ever fight with your siblings or your friends over something, like a toy, or maybe just the best seat? Maybe the toy is really yours, but your friend is playing with it. And then the fight begins. When I did this with my siblings, my mom would take the toy from both of us, and everyone ended up being sad. As soon as Abraham leaves Egypt with Lot, they encounter a similar problem. They notice the land is still desolate. They both have many servants, animals, and wealth. In fact, they have so much that they begin to fight over the land. As they are walking, they see a well of water. One of the servants runs forward and exclaims, "This is our water! Only Lot and his family may drink here. You can't have any." And they fight. Next, they arrive at a field of lush grass, and another servant runs ahead. "This is our grass! Only Abraham's animals may eat here. Your animals can eat whatever grows over there in that sand." Abraham sees all the fighting that is happening around him and in his name. He looks to the east and sees a green valley full of food and water. Thinking to himself, "I'm the oldest. Lot will have to listen to me. I can tell him to stay here in the desert. I will take care of myself, my wealth, and my family." He walks towards Lot, ready to tell him to stay in this desolate land. Then God reminds him of Egypt. Abraham remembers the last time he ran from a hard situation and looked for the easiest solution. It nearly cost him his wife. He remembers that God promised to take care of him in this land, in spite of how impossible it looks. So when Lot and Abraham meet on the top of the nearby mountain, Abraham gives up his rights. Instead of telling Lot to go and suffer in the desert, Abraham says, let's stop fighting. Choose whatever land you want. I will go the opposite direction. Lot looks around and sees the lush valley. Sure, the people there are known to be mean, selfish, and downright evil, but he thinks of the wealth he can acquire there. With such good pastures, his livestock will prosper. He can live the easy life. So, without much more thought, he exclaims, I will take that land. Then he gives Abraham a hug, says goodbye, and leaves. Abraham turns to the desert to walk away, ready for whatever hardship it may bring. Then he hears God speak. God says, take a look around. Look north, west, south, and east. I will give you all of this land. You will have children, and your descendants will become a great nation. They will rule all that you see here. As Abraham walks down the mountain, he sees his wife, his servants, his herds of cattle, and the desolate land before him. He knows things will still be hard for a time, but he also knows God promised to take care of him. He has peace with his nephew Lot, and he has peace in God's promise. Have you ever really wanted something, and maybe your parents even said that you could have it, but you wait, and it seems like it will never come? Then you almost forget about the thing that you were promised, and suddenly it is given to you. This normally happens to me around Christmas. If you remember the story of Abraham and Lot, God made a promise to Abraham. However, God's promise did not happen right away. Abraham had to wait. On this day, Abraham sits under a tree to avoid the heat beating down from the sun. Years ago, when he and his nephew Lot parted ways, God gave him a promise. God promised him a son. But Sarah is now old and still doesn't have any children. His nephew Lot is still his only family. But he is in another valley and in a dangerous city. While resting under the tree, Abraham still feels like a stranger in a foreign land, even though it is the land God promised him. Will God really keep his promise? As these thoughts float through his head, Abraham sees 3 men walking towards him. Knowing what it is like to be a stranger in a strange land, Abraham gets up and he runs towards the men. He welcomes them into his tent and asks them to rest for a while. In fact, Abraham does more than just give them a place to rest. He also gives them a feast. He goes to the field to find a cow for the feast, and he thinks, one of these men seems a little different. As he and his wife Sarah prepare the feast, he realizes that God has given him plenty of wealth, so much so that he can take care of anyone. However, God still has not given him the promised son. Finally, they finish, and he serves the guests the feast that they have just prepared. As they are eating, the one that Abraham thought seemed a little different asked Abraham about his wife Sarah. Then he reveals himself. He is actually God. God is visiting Abraham. And once more, God promises Sarah will have a son. Upon hearing this, Sarah starts to laugh. She is far too old for children. They've stopped believing in that promise long ago. The stranger asks, is anything too hard for God? In 1 year, you will have a child. They leave just as they've come. As they walk over the horizon, Abraham knows that God will keep his promise. Even if the promise doesn't happen right away, and they have to wait, nothing is too hard for God, and God will be faithful. Does God help us when we disobey? when we live for ourselves instead of trusting in Him. After God visited Abraham, He sent angels to visit the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now these two cities followed the ways of Cain. Just like the people in Noah's day, everyone's thoughts and actions are evil. They only live for themselves. And just as we saw before, this self-worship leads to pain, suffering, sin, and death. Whenever they want something, they take it. If someone gets in the way of their desires, they kill them. They don't care who they hurt. They only care about themselves. Because of the wickedness of these cities, the two angels come to destroy them. However, Abraham remembers his nephew Lot. He knows that Lot lives in Sodom. So Abraham talks with God. He prays for God to save the cities. If only there are 10 righteous people. 10 people who are not consumed with themselves. 10 people who do not hurt others. Unfortunately, there are not even 10 people who do not live only for themselves. The only righteous person in the two cities is Lot and his family. So God commands his angels to rescue Lot from the city that is slowly destroying him. Lot chose to live with wicked people. But God, in his love, comes to save Lot before he is consumed by those he is around. When the angels arrive, Lot sees them and offers them shelter in a mill, similar to Abraham. But when the men of the city see that Lot has taken strangers into his house, they surround his house and yell, "Let us have these men! Let us hurt them! Let us do whatever we want!" Lot says no! So they scream threats at Lot. "You are a foreigner here, and yet you will tell us no? We will kill you!" Unfortunately, Lot is already corrupted by the city. In an effort to save the strangers, Lot offers his own family for the men to hurt. Fortunately, the angels intervene. They reach out towards the men of the city, and all those who want to hurt Lot lose their sight. Now, unable to see, they can no longer harm Lot nor his family. After this, the angel turns towards Lot and informs him of the city's impending destruction. If Lot wants to live, he must flee the wickedness of the city. If Lot chooses to stay and live in the wickedness that surrounds him, he will become just like them and be destroyed along with them. However, if Lot chooses to follow and trust God, he will be saved from the impending destruction. Lot chooses to trust God, and he flees the wickedness of the city. As he runs from the city, fire falls from the sky. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are burned to the ground. Abraham wakes up the next morning, and he looks towards the valley that the cities are in. All he sees is smoke rising to the sky. However, when Abraham prayed, God promised to protect the righteous in the city. So Lot is saved. Even though Lot chose to disobey God and surround himself with wickedness, God protected him. God comes to save Lot, even though Lot was walking away from God. Sometimes I look around me and see that I have everything I need. I have a warm house in the winter, food on my table at supper time, a family that loves me, friends to hang out with. I have many things to be thankful for. So, do I still need to trust God if I have all these things? In our story, Abraham has a similar question. He has everything he needs. 1 year after God visited Abraham and saved Lot, Sarah has a son. They name their son Isaac to remind them of all the ways that God has blessed them. Now Abraham doesn't need anything. He has wealth, servants, and a son. He does everything for Isaac. All he wants is Isaac to grow up into a strong young man and to continue his lineage. After all, God promises a great nation will come through Isaac. One day, Isaac is now a young man. God again speaks to Abraham. God asks Abraham to make a sacrifice, similar to what Abel made. However, this time, God asks Abraham to give up that which is most precious to him. God does not want Abraham's sheep. It wouldn't really matter to Abraham to give a few sheep away. God wants Abraham to know that he can trust God with everything and anything. So God asks for Isaac. Now Abraham, he is thrown aback by this request. God promised a great nation through Isaac. He knows that God keeps his promises, but he also knows that God wants him to sacrifice Isaac. God is asking the impossible again. However, over the years, Abraham has learned that he can trust God with the impossible, so he chooses to obey. Early in the morning, Abraham wakes up. He walks over to his son Isaac to say good morning one last time. He says, "Let's go make a sacrifice to God." Together, they gather the supplies and load the donkey. They start their long walk up the mountain. Abraham walks in silence, contemplating how God will keep his word. Will God raise Isaac from the dead? Will he protect Isaac from the flames? Maybe God will provide something else to take Isaac's place on the altar. Isaac asks, "Dad, we have the wood for the sacrifice, but we forgot to bring the lamb." Abraham is in distress. What does he tell his son? But then he answers, "God will provide the lamb." After all, God always keeps his promises. When they arrive at the top of the mountain, they stack some stones to make an altar. Abraham finally breaks. Weeping, he tells Isaac, You will be the sacrifice." Like Abraham, Isaac does not understand, but also like Abraham, Isaac trusts his father. So, Isaac lays down on the altar, and Abraham pulls out his knife. When suddenly the angel of God appears. He grabs Abraham's hand, commanding, "Do not harm the boy." Just as the angel intervenes, Abraham hears the sheep baaing in the bushes nearby. There is a lamb to take Isaac's place. God provides. Abraham gives his best to God, and God provides for him. God keeps his promises. Isaac will not be harmed. Even though Abraham has everything he needs, he chooses to trust God with his very best, and God continues to provide for Abraham. Sometimes we need to make tough choices. In the Bible, we see people ask God for help when they come to a hard decision. In fact, this is something that I do often, and if I listen, God provides an answer. It's not always the answer I want or expect, but God continues to guide me. And sometimes I have to look to other people's examples and learn from them how to trust God when choices are difficult. As Abraham continues to age, Isaac is not even married yet. God's promise is not truly fulfilled. If Abraham dies, Isaac will not have a wife or family. Abraham's line will be cut off. However, Abraham doesn't want Isaac to marry just anyone. He wants Isaac to marry someone from his own clan. In those days, it was the parents' job to find a suitable partner for the children. So Abraham calls his servant, and he asks him to go back to his home country and find a wife for Isaac. So Abraham's servant packs his camels and sets off for a long journey. After many days, he finally arrives at Abraham's old country. Here he stops and prays. He doesn't know how to pick a wife for someone else, but he has seen Abraham trust in God over and over. And he has seen God be faithful to Abraham again and again. So he decides he will trust in God for this decision. He asks God, "Show me the woman who is right for Isaac. If one of these women comes out to this well and gives me a drink and then asks to water my camels, I will know that she is the one for Isaac." As his prayer leaves his lips, a woman named Rebecca comes to the well. Being thirsty and tired from his journey, he asks her for a drink of water. And you know what happened next? Rebecca gives him a drink of water and then asks to water his camels. Just like he prayed. When she finishes watering his camels, he asks Rebecca, "What clan are you from?" And she replies, "I'm from the clan of Terah, the same clan as Abraham." Just like Abraham asked. Seeing that he needs rest, Rebecca offers the servant to come and eat at her father's house. When he meets the family, he tells them the purpose of his trip. He says, "I am sent here by your relative Abraham, whom God has greatly blessed. He has a son named Isaac who needs a wife. Would you, Rebecca, be willing to come back with me and marry Isaac?" To everyone's surprise, she says yes. Like Abraham many years before her, she now chooses to step out in faith and see where God will lead her. Then they set off on their long journey back to Canaan. After many days, she looks out and sees Isaac at a distance. Suddenly, she jumps off her camel and runs towards where the servant is and asks him, "Who is that man?" The servant answers, "He is Isaac, the one you are to marry." Isaac comes to greet them, and joy floods their hearts. God keeps his promises. Abraham's line is secured. The servant asks God for guidance, and God answers. Rebecca trusts God, and God provides. Isaac and Rebecca marry, and a nation is born. More importantly, someone much greater will come from this line. Jesus will be born from the line of Abraham and Isaac. Once, at a picnic, I got up to refill my drink. When I made it back to my seat, I found my brother stole it from me. I now have a choice. Get mad at my brother because he is clearly wrong, or keep the peace. Should I start a fight and make him leave? Or should I go and find another seat, choosing peace over strife? In the Bible, we see two men with a similar problem, although their stakes are a bit higher than a seat at a picnic. Abimelech is a great man. In fact, he is king over the land. His father made a treaty with Abraham many years ago, but he has never met that patriarch nor his tribe. One year, the rain never came, and the food became scarce. It is this year that a nomad named Isaac shows up. He said he is on his way to Egypt, but God told him to stay here, in Abimelech's land. Apparently, he is the son of Abraham, so Abimelech, bound by an old treaty, reluctantly lets him stay. Isaac plants his fields, digs his wells, and pitches his tents in Abimelech's land. In spite of the famine, Isaac is successful. His fields grow bumper crops, animals multiply, and wells flow with water. He claims that God is blessing him. Meanwhile, Abimelech's fields are still suffering from the famine. Sure, he enjoys some of the fruits from Isaac's fields, but Abimelech wants his own fields to be great. So his servants stuff Isaac's wells with rocks and dirt. Abimelech thinks maybe he'll just leave, or better yet, he'll fight for his well. Then I can make him leave and I can take his wealth. Instead of starting a fight, Isaac just moves and digs another well. So again, Abimelech sends his men to take the water. Again, Isaac does not fight. Finally, Abimelech says, "Go away! You're not wanted here. You're too powerful, wealthy, blessed. Now leave!" Unfortunately, when Isaac leaves, so does God's blessing. So Abimelech's fields do not become better, his herds do not multiply, and the famine still scorches the land. Even the fields and wells he confiscated from Isaac do not produce for him. Isaac has something greater than Abimelech's power, greater than his shrewdness. Isaac has God's blessing. Abimelech realizes his own faults and sees Isaac's innocence. Then he realizes his own need for Isaac's God. Finally, Abimelech chases after Isaac. Not to harm him or take his wealth. This time, Abimelech seeks the thing that Isaac has that he is missing. Abimelech seeks Isaac's God. He catches up to Isaac in the middle of the desert, and yet Isaac is still content, even here. In fact, Isaac is worshiping God, thanking God for giving him a barren wasteland. Isaac sees Abimelech and asks, "Why are you here? Don't you hate me?" Abimelech responds, "I see that wherever you go, your God blesses you. Let us have peace." Isaac then rejoices with Abimelech. He throws a feast for his enemy, who is now his friend. The next day, Isaac's servants come rejoicing, for they found water in the desert. And Isaac recognizes God's faithfulness. God keeps his promise to Abraham through his son Isaac, and Abimelech sees Isaac's God to be true. Even in the desert, God takes care of those who trust him. Have you ever seen someone who will do anything to get their way? It doesn't really matter who they hurt, as long as they're the best. Or maybe you do this. You might take advantage of someone, but if you win, it'll be worth it, right? Actually, no. How we get our way or win matters as much as the victory. In the Bible, we see two brothers who need to learn the same lesson. Isaac's sons, Esau, and his younger brother Jacob, who are actually twins, but are as different as they can be. Esau wants nothing more than to be free and avoid responsibilities that come with being the oldest. He wants to roam the open plains, hunt, and only take care of himself. Whereas Jacob desires everything: wealth, power, and prestige. He is always looking for opportunities for these things, even if he has to take advantage of someone else. One day, Esau returns from an unsuccessful hunt. He is tired and hungry when he sees Jacob cooking some stew, and he asks him, "May I have some of your soup?" Jacob, never one to turn down such an opportunity, answers, "Sure, but only if you give me your birthright as the firstborn son." Without much thought, Esau agrees. "Of course, it's useless to me if I starve." After his belly is full and he can think properly, he becomes angry. His own brother took advantage of him in his time of need. Jacob never really thought about how he hurt his brother. After all, he won. Now he had the birthright. Unfortunately for Jacob, his ambition led him to hurt his own family. Sometime later, his aging father is about to die. But before he dies, he wants to give the blessing to his eldest son, Esau. Jacob worries that his father will give all the blessings to Esau and only have curses left for him because of his trickery. So Jacob and his mother devise a plan to gain the blessing that he covets. When Isaac sends Esau out to hunt, Jacob springs into action. While his mother cooks a goat the way she knows her husband likes it, Jacob goes into his brother's tent to steal some of his clothes. He disguises himself as his brother, then takes his mother's meal to where his father waits. Now his father can't really see anymore, so when he heard the tent flap open, he asked, "Who is it?" Jacob lies. "It's me, Esau." Then Isaac invites him to come forward with the meal that he has prepared. Isaac says, "You smell like Esau, you feel like Esau, but you sound like Jacob. How have you returned so quickly?" Again, Jacob lies. God provided for me, so my hunt was quick." Now Isaac is convinced that Jacob is actually Esau. So Isaac eats the meal and blesses Jacob. Jacob's plan works. He deceives his father. Again, he proves himself better than his foolish brother. He cheated the fool from his birthright, and now his blessing. Again, he wins. When Esau returns from the hunt, he goes to his father. His father realizes that he was deceived. Unfortunately, he gave all the blessing to Jacob and has none left for Esau. Enraged, Esau swears to kill his brother for all of his deception. He will pay for his lies. But Isaac, not wanting his sons to become like Cain and Abel, he sends Jacob far off to the homeland of his mother to find a wife. Jacob gloated in his victories, not seeing the people he damaged. Now, like Cain, he is being exiled from his family. He cheated to gain power and position, but now all that is stripped away. He begins his long journey alone, losing all the things he gained through deception. Yet we will see that God is not done with Jacob, and that God goes with Jacob and protects him even in exile.
I like to pick on people. Sometimes I even make jokes at someone else's expense. But then someone started making fun of me. I laughed the joke off, but inside I was hurt. Fortunately, I also realized something else. I am hurt by the same thing that I do to others. If I don't like being made fun of, maybe others don't like it either. Suddenly, the reward of the laugh just isn't worth the pain of the joke. Many years ago, Laban met the servant of Abraham, a wealthy man of distant relation. Even Abraham's servant displayed more wealth than Laban ever had. Fortunately, Laban was able to gain an extraordinary gift, just so that his sister could marry Abraham's son, Isaac. It was a common practice at the time to give a gift or dowry when taking a wife. It was sort of like compensation for the family losing one of their daughters. Unfortunately, that was a long time ago, and now Laban's wealth is running low once more. Just last year, Laban lost his servants who took care of his sheep. He could no longer afford to pay them. Now his daughters, Rachel and Leah, work as his shepherds. He might not be as wealthy as he once was, but he'll think of something. He always finds a way to turn situations to his advantage. Then he sees his youngest daughter, Rachel, running towards him. She shouts, "We have a guest! We have a guest!" Great, Laban thinks. I'll have to kill another sheep, another expense. Rachel continues, "A man named Jacob is here. He's the son of your sister, Rebecca." Oh, Laban's eyes light up. If Abraham's servant brought gifts, imagine the wealth of Abraham's grandson. So Laban quickly runs to greet Jacob. But to Laban's disappointment, he learns that Jacob didn't bring anything with him. No wealth, nothing. But he is Rebekah's son, so Laban shows him the due hospitality. An extra hand to tend the sheep won't hurt either. After a month of Jacob tending Laban's sheep, Laban asked, "What shall I pay you for your work?" Now, Jacob loves Rachel because of her striking beauty, so Jacob replies, I'll work 7 years as a dowry for your daughter Rachel." Delighted, Laban agrees. Again, he'll get an extraordinary gift, but this time for his daughter. With Jacob looking after his flocks, Laban's wealth greatly increases. As the years pass and the day of the wedding nears, Laban thinks to himself, "I cannot lose Jacob. His work is making me rich. If I give him Rachel as I promised, he will leave and go back to his homeland, and my wealth again will diminish." Then he looks at Leah, his oldest daughter, ugly and unwanted. If he could only make Jacob work for her as well, then he would have 7 more years of prosperity. A plan comes to Laban's mind. For the wedding, Laban throws a glorious feast. He does his best to ignore how much it cost him, because he can't let his stinginess throw his ruse. Rachel is in the most beautiful dress he could find for her. He must remind Jacob that she is worth every bit of the 7 years of labor. The party ends and the bride and groom leave to the honeymoon tent. But this is where Laban enacts his plan. He bought the same dress for Leah, although it did not make her as pretty as Rachel. In the candlelight, no one can tell. Now Laban quickly calls Rachel and replaces her with Leah. The next morning, Jacob wakes up to find that he's married Leah, not Rachel. Furious, Jacob shouts, "You tricked me!" Smiling, Laban responds, "In our tradition, the oldest always marries first. If you want Rachel, you can just work another 7 years." Trapped and tricked, Jacob consents. Jacob realizes he was deceived, just as he deceived his brother and his father. The person he trusted betrayed him. Maybe this is how his own family felt from his actions. He will stop using people to gain an advantage. The hurt and the pain it causes just isn't worth it. He decides to work another 7 years so he can marry beautiful Rachel, whom he loves. Then he will return home and seek forgiveness from those he deceived.
Toxic. Maybe you've seen toxic trolls on the internet. But more often, toxic people can be a lot closer than that. Maybe a bully at school, or worse, someone who pretends to be a friend, but is always cutting you down, always finding a way to manipulate you and hurt you. Jacob found himself in a similar place. Tired, Jacob walks to his tent. He's worked for his father-in-law for 14 years. He sees his wife and his children. He's grateful for all of them, but he knows that they cannot grow up here, near Laban. Laban cheats Jacob every chance he gets. And Jacob has had enough. He leaves his tent and walks towards Laban. "I must go back to my family in Canaan," Jacob says. But Laban will not listen. Instead, he promises more wealth. "I will be honest now. I will give you the super special good sheep." So, Jacob agrees. Unfortunately, as soon as he agrees, Laban changes his promise and gives Jacob the lesser sheep. Jacob knows he needs to leave, but Laban will not let him. If Jacob leaves, Laban will claim everything Jacob has. He will take Jacob's wives, his sons, and his herds. Laban always takes whatever he can. So Jacob stays a while longer. But Laban continues to be dishonest with Jacob. Now even Laban's sons start plotting against Jacob. One day, Jacob hears them plotting how they can destroy Jacob and take back all that he has earned over the years. Jacob knows what he must do. He might lose everything if he flees. Laban's sons will be faster and will act viciously when they catch him. But he will also lose everything if he stays. So Jacob goes to his wives, and they agree that their father will seize and waste everything that they have if they stay. So, that night, while Laban is away, they gather all that they have and run. Soon, the news makes it to Laban that his son-in-law Jacob has left. Infuriated, he gathers his relatives to chase Jacob down. He will take back his daughters. He will seize Jacob's flocks, and he will plunder his wealth and punish Jacob for thinking he could get away. However, God appears to Laban. Do not touch Jacob, God commands. So when Laban finally catches up to Jacob, he does not attack. He does confront him, though. Why did you leave like a thief without telling me? Jacob responds, if I told you, you would make me leave empty-handed. You would have claimed my family, my herds, and my wealth. And just as Jacob thought, Laban does not deny this. Instead, he says, they are all mine. Your wives are my daughters. Your herds are from my herds. Your wealth is from my wealth. But God told me to leave you be, so let us make peace. Not trusting Laban, because of the years of treachery, Jacob sets up a boundary between them. Together, they build a monument to mark this boundary. Laban promises before God, or makes a covenant, never to cross this line to harm Jacob. And Jacob agrees never to cross this line to harm Laban. Then Laban returns home. Jacob continues towards Canaan, thanking God for his protection, leaving all that is toxic behind him. Can God be trusted? We all know that the right answer is yes. Of course he can. But then we act as if he cannot be. Sure, I can trust God, but maybe it would be better if I make my own plan to save myself. Maybe I should ignore what God wants me to do, just this time. Then our actions disagree with our words of trust. This is the very question that Jacob has to ask himself in our story. Jacob escaped from Laban's household. God intervenes and protects Jacob. However, now Jacob has another problem looming in front of him. His brother Esau, the one he cheated years ago. So he sends messengers ahead of him to inform Esau of his arrival, and hopefully to find out if Esau has any ill will towards Jacob still. Maybe he forgot about all the ways Jacob took advantage of him when they were younger. Maybe he doesn't want to kill Jacob anymore. Maybe, just maybe. Then the messenger returns. Esau is coming to greet Jacob, but not in celebration. Esau is bringing an army. Jacob cries out to God, please protect me from Esau, just as you did with Laban. But then he comes up with a brilliant plan, just in case God can't help. God gave him many herds of sheep and cattle while he was with Laban. Now he can use those herds as a gift to appease his brother. Each servant is to give the gift and say, Jacob is next. Then, when Esau is expecting to see his brother, he will get another gift. By the time he sees Jacob, surely he will be happy from all of the gifts. Jacob sends his servants across the river to begin his plan. That evening, he sends his family over. All he needs to do is cross the river, and he will be in Esau's land, returning home. But he cannot make the step into the water. He turns back through the camp. Maybe he should run again. Maybe he should break his promise with Laban and go that direction. Maybe. Just maybe. But then, he sees someone. Not a member of his party. He looks different. A man of power. He's unsure why, but this man can help him. He knows that he can help him, so he goes to him. He grabs his shoulders and pleads, "Help me! Please help me!" The man responds, "Let me go. It will be day soon." But Jacob refuses. "Bless me, and I will let you go." As the man reaches out, Jacob's legs give way. The man says, "I will change you forever. You will no longer be known as Jacob, the deceiver, but you will be known as Israel. God fights for you." As Jacob climbs back to his feet, the man is gone. He limps into the water. He will cross. He will face his brother. He met God, and God said that he will fight for Jacob. Even if Esau attacks him with his army, God will be with Jacob, and Jacob will trust God. Have you ever faced a situation you tried to solve by doing something you knew was wrong? Not like giving the wrong answer on a test wrong, but like cheating, lying, or hurting someone wrong. It may quickly solve the problem, but in the end, you usually end up in a worse situation. One of Jacob's sons, Judah, did something similar. Judah has a messed up family. His mom and dad got married, and then his dad immediately decided to take another wife. Her sister, in fact. After that, each of his wives gave him a girlfriend to hang out with as well. The worst part in all of this is that his mom is not even loved by his dad. And yet, they all live together. Trust me, it gets weirder. If you look at his brothers, they are even worse. His oldest brother decides to date one of his dad's girlfriends.
Hey.
I know, gross. Then, when a guy hurts his sister, his next two older brothers decide to go create a medical emergency in the dude's entire town. When all the people are in terrible pain, they just go and kill everyone, or at least all the men. Not much better. To top it off, his dad basically ignores Judah because his younger brother Joseph is from his dad's favorite wife. So he gets all the cool things, and Judah is left to hang out with his psychotic older brothers, tending the sheep. Judah's life is pretty much ruined by his younger brother, Joseph, the spoiled one his dad loves. His dad even gave him a colorful coat so that everyone can know that Joseph is a special one. All Judah receives is hand-me-downs with holes in it that still smells like his older brother Simeon. Yeah, the crazy one who destroyed the whole city. Judah likes to think the reason Joseph has a bright coat is so that he can be avoided easier. "Look, the annoying hazard is coming! Watch out!" Because if you don't run from Joseph, he will destroy your fun by tattling, or worse, he will start rambling about his stupid dreams. "Hey Judah, we all gathered wheat in my dream, but mine was better than yours, 'cause yours bowed down to mine." Or, "Hey Judah, I dreamt we were all stars, but I was the best star. You bowed down to me." "Hey Judah, I'm better than you in every way." Ugh. Run or listen to the brat ramble. One day, Judah and his brothers had to take the sheep to pasture. And they actually had a brilliant idea of how to avoid Joseph this time. Let's start towards the normal field, and then let's go far, far away. It should at least give us a few weeks of peace without Joseph spying on us to go tattle to Dad. Brilliant! A few weeks of peace. You will still have to tolerate the psychopaths, but at least they're not always talking about dreams. Unfortunately, after they arrive at the new field, far from home, they see a far too familiar colorful coat or safety jacket coming their way. Maybe we should run. But that's when the psychos start talking. we should just kill that guy. He is way too annoying. We could just throw his body in a hole in the ground and no one would know. Yeah, but killing is a bit extreme, his older brother retorts. Let's just put him in a hole. Then we wouldn't have to kill him, and if he can't get out, that's on him, right? Although Judah hated Joseph, he never thought about killing him, but these ideas seemed pretty decent to him. At least he wouldn't have to listen to his brother ramble ever again. And maybe his dad would notice Judah for a change. That's when he saw a caravan. Basically a bunch of merchants who traveled with camels. And a better idea struck him. We don't need to kill him or let him starve. We could just have him, relocated. Yeah, that sounds so much better than slavery. We would be paid for him to be relocated far, far away. And he will learn how to keep his mouth shut and do some work for a change. Really, I think we're doing him a favor. Yeah, it's definitely for his good. So, they sold him and hoped the problem vanished. There was a slight issue of explaining it all to Dad, but leave it to the crazy ones to solve that problem. They slaughtered a goat and painted Joseph's coat red with the blood. It looked just like a lion ate him. When they delivered the news to their dad, he took it less than well. In fact, all their dad did was cry about his son being dead. Nothing Judah did mattered. His life was much like it was before. Surrounded by crazy brothers, his dad still giving Joseph all the attention, even though Joseph is gone. His scheming, his deceit, did nothing to improve anything. It just made everything worse. Have you ever been angry at someone for the same thing that you do? Like making up rules for a game that benefit you more than others. If you do it, it's fine. But if someone else changes the rules to benefit them, they are a bad person. If you remember Judah, Joseph's older brother, he does similar things. However, in the end, he realizes that if he doesn't like being treated unfairly, maybe he should not treat others unfairly. Judah cannot take the guilt of selling his younger brother into slavery. His dad is a mess, always moping about how Joseph is dead. This is not the kind of life he wanted when he sold his younger brother. He was hoping his dad would finally notice him, with his brother out of the picture. But he isn't as wild as his older brothers, and he will never be as good as Joseph. Maybe if he just left this place, things would be better. Maybe if his messed up older brothers were no longer around him, he could be a better person. And if you want to hear the story about how crazy his brothers are, you can check the link below. So, Judah moves to a friend's house. He is done with his family. He will be better on his own. At first, it seems to go okay. He finds a beautiful girl to become his wife. They have kids. Things are looking up. Judah even finds a beautiful bride for his first son. Her name is Tamar. Unfortunately, this is where Judah's sins start to catch up with him. His eldest son is so evil that God leaves him to his own wickedness and he dies shortly after they are married. This leaves Tamar as a widow in a new family. In those days, it was the duty of the dead husband's family to take care of the widow. So Judah does his duty and marries Tamar to his second son. Yeah, I know it's a bit weird, but that's how they took care of widows at that time. Unfortunately for Tamar, Judah's second son is worse than his first. He is evil and selfish through and through. He does not love Tamar at all. Instead of helping her and caring for her as he should, he abuses her and then dies because of his own wickedness. Once again, Tamar is left alone in a family where she is unwanted. This girl is cursed, Judah thinks. If I give another son to her as the law requires, he will die as well. So Judah sends her away to live with her parents. She will no longer be his problem. And maybe his family will live a bit longer now that she's gone. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Judah's wife soon dies. He begins to feel the grief that he caused his father. He killed his brother in his heart by selling him as a slave and deceived his father into thinking his son was dead. And now all he knows is death. All that is left of his family now is his one son. Elsewhere, Tamar is left alone, discarded and uncared for. Her family already tried to have her married, but all of her husbands were wicked and died, and now nobody wants her. Her father-in-law, who is supposed to protect and provide for her, decided to abandon her instead. One day, Tamar hears that Judah is coming to a sheep shearing party. Sounds fun. An idea springs to her mind. Maybe she can force him to provide for her. So she disguises herself and waits for him at the gate. Judah walks by and is tired of being lonely. He sees a beautiful girl by the gate. He knows she's not right for him. She is much younger. But he is tired of being all alone. So he says, "Hey girl, wanna go on a date?" She responds with, "Sure, but how do I know you're rich enough to take care of me?" I got the best goats. I'll show you sometime." "Well, okay, but I need something now. How about you give me your walking stick? It looks unique. Then later, when you have time to show me your amazing goats, I can give it back to you." Okay, here you go." "Thanks." Sometime later, word reaches Judah that his daughter-in-law has been hanging out with this weird old guy that she shouldn't even be with. And Judah thinks to himself, "What luck! I can finally get rid of this girl for good. I won't have to be responsible for her again. And I won't have to give up my only son. This is perfect." So he gives the command to kill her. Yeah, it's a bit harsh. Perhaps this is where Judah's sons learned their wickedness. The town goes to carry out Judah's command, when all of a sudden Tamar hands them a walking stick. "The old guy I went on a date with, he owns this staff." Judah looks at the walking stick. It's his! All of his wickedness is exposed. He wanted to kill her for the sin that he committed. It was not his crazy brother's fault that he sinned against his father and his brother, and it's not Tamar's fault that his sons died. And it's not Tamar's fault that she's on trial now. It is his fault. It is his sin. His sin follows him wherever he goes. Now he must repent. Now he does the opposite of what he's been doing all along. He can no longer run from this, so he hangs his head and exclaims, "She is more righteous than I. I refuse to provide for her, as I am required to." So Judah took Tamar into his family and provided for her. He chose to live differently. He chose to stop running from his sin and allow God to forgive him. Bad things happen, sometimes even to people who don't deserve it. Maybe you are blamed for something you did not do, or someone just wants to hurt you. Either way, something bad happens. Does God see us or even care for us when such things are happening? We see the same thing in the Bible. Remember Joseph? His life goes from bad to worse, but God is with him the entire time. He is the kid who was innocent and his brothers wanted to kill him. Yet instead of killing him, they sold him into slavery. Talk about a bad day. Now Joseph is in chains and on a long walk to Egypt. Once he arrives, he is immediately sold, like one would sell a pet. A prominent man named Potiphar bought him. He is the head of security at Pharaoh's palace. If you think going to school for 5 days a week is bad, Joseph is forced to work every day, even on Saturdays and Sundays, and no holidays. He must wake up early, feed the horse, clean the house, polish the chariot, and then go to bed. No rest, just work. But he is innocent. He doesn't deserve any of this. Did God forget about him? Soon, Potiphar begins to notice Joseph. Maybe Joseph is a harder worker. Maybe he's just good with people. Or maybe God never forgot about him. Potiphar puts Joseph in charge of his horses. After a few months, Potiphar's horses are in better condition than they've ever been. God blesses everything Joseph works on, so Potiphar puts him in charge of all of his animals. Sure enough, they become healthier, and the other servants begin to work better now that Joseph is in charge. So, Potiphar leaves his entire estate in Joseph's care. When should the crops be planted? Asked Joseph. What new chariot should he buy? Asked Joseph. What should he do with all of his extra gold? Asked Joseph. He sees that God is with Joseph, and he knows that Joseph will make the right decisions. He will not have to worry about anything while Joseph is in charge. Well, maybe he'll keep deciding what's for dinner. That's one choice he wants to keep for himself. One day, Potiphar announces he must leave for a while to serve Pharaoh. It's a part of his job as head of security. But he is confident Joseph will keep his house in order while he's gone. Unfortunately, Potiphar's wife is not the best sort of girl. Not having TikTok, all she does is watch Joseph day after day. When her husband leaves, she puts on her best makeup and calls Joseph. Come here, give me kisses. Joseph steps back. No, that is only for your husband to do. And he runs away. What? A slave refuses to even kiss her? No one refuses to listen to her. Worse yet, now Joseph avoids her until one day she catches him in the house all alone. She sneaks up on him and grabs his shirt. Hey Joseph, how about a kiss now? No! He tries to get away, but she rips off his shirt. When Potiphar comes home, he is furious. His wife comes to him with Joseph's shirt. Look, your slave tried to make out with me. I screamed and he ran away. Potiphar knows that his wife is evil. Most slaves would be killed by such actions. But Potiphar must do something. So he throws Joseph in prison because of his own wife's sin. Again, Joseph is innocent. And again, he is being treated unfairly. Yet God never forgets him. The same God that was with Joseph when he was in his father's fields and protected him from being killed by his brothers is the same God who helped Joseph in Potiphar's house. He is the same God who will help him while he is in prison. Have you ever seen God do something amazing? Like take a bad situation and make it good. You lose a toy and find a better one while looking for it. Or you're missing a Lego piece you need for a build. And then you come up with a better solution. God does this over and over in our lives. If we look in the Bible, we can see God constantly use bad situations for good. God is with Joseph even while he is in prison. Like Potiphar, the warden of the prison notices something different about Joseph. He puts him in charge of a few prisoners that are in his cell. Soon enough, those prisoners stop fighting. Then the warden gives Joseph a few more responsibilities. After a little while, Joseph is taking care of the whole prison. The fights among the prisoners die down. The guards stop being cruel to the prisoners. There is no longer a shortage of bread and clean water. Like Potiphar, the warden no longer worries about anything that happens in the prison, because Joseph is taking care of it. One day, 2 new prisoners are placed under Joseph's care. 2 men who served Pharaoh, both his butler and his baker. They lack nothing because Joseph is taking care of them. But one day he notices that they are in distress. So Joseph inquires, "What's wrong?" "We had dreams, yet there's no one here to explain them to us." In those days, dreams were seen as a very important glimpse into the future. Joseph gives them a simple answer. Isn't it God who knows the meaning to dreams? Can't he provide the answer even in a prison? So the butler tells Joseph his dream. "I saw 3 grapevines, and I picked the grapes. Then I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup." Sure enough, God gives Joseph the meaning. The 3 vines are 3 days in which Pharaoh will release you from this prison and restore you as chief butler. Maybe this guy can help me out, he thinks, and says, "When he restores you, please remember me. I am innocent, and I was sold into slavery and then unjustly thrown into prison." The butler, excited about being released, agrees. And when the 3rd day comes, he leaves the prison. Joseph waits, but there is no word from the butler. Again, he is forgotten. However, God does not forget Joseph. After some time, Pharaoh has a dream, but no one can tell him its meaning. His best and wisest men can only say, "Maybe you had some bad pizza." That is when the butler remembers Joseph. "Excuse me, Pharaoh, a while ago I messed up, and you had me imprisoned. While there, a man explained my dreams to me. Maybe he can do the same for you." Pharaoh is elated. "Bring him here immediately." When Joseph arrives, Pharaoh explains his dreams to him. "I saw 7 of the largest, fattest cows. And then 7 ugly, skinny, sickly cows showed up, and they devoured the fat cows. Then I saw 7 heads of luscious grain ready for harvest. When again, 7 ugly, sickly heads of grain sprouted up and devoured them." Oddly, Joseph did not tell him the meaning right away. Instead, he said, I can't give you the meaning to this dream. No man can. But God is able to. Both dreams are the same. The 7 healthy cows and grain are 7 prosperous years, whereas the 7 sick cows and grain are 7 years of famine where there will be no food. Joseph goes on. Pharaoh should have a man collect 1/5 of the produce during the prosperous years, so that you may have something to eat during the time of famine. Pharaoh is shocked by this prisoner's wisdom. He asked his advisors, "Is there anyone in Egypt that God is with and who has such wisdom?" They just shrug. So like Potiphar and the warden in the prison, Pharaoh appoints Joseph over all of Egypt. "There will be no one over you except me. Your word will be like my word. Do what you say. Collect during the prosperous time so we may eat during the famine." Although Joseph was falsely accused and thrown into prison, even after he helped others, they forgot about him. Yet God is always with him. God gives him the wisdom he needs in every situation. God remembers Joseph. And God put him in a position to save an entire nation. Have you ever tried to do the right thing and everything just goes bad? You try to be kind to someone and they still become mad and just yell at you. You try to obey the rules and you get blamed for someone else's actions. Judah finds himself in a similar situation. He tries to live differently, and yet everything just goes wrong. After Judah realizes his own problems and sins, he returns home. But He does not go along with his older brother's bad ideas and refuses to let his father's favoritism to his younger brother Benjamin bother him. He sets himself apart, repenting of his previous sins. However, famine still comes to their land. Their crops no longer grow, and finding fields to feed their livestock becomes harder and harder. While out with the sheep one day, he sees a group of travelers. They tell him that there is food in Egypt. The governor there has stored up the grain harvest for the past 7 years and is selling his great stores of food. When Judah's father hears about this, he sends his sons to Egypt to buy grain, leaving Benjamin at home, of course. Since Joseph's disappearance, he never lets Benjamin out of his sight. While the people in Canaan are starving, when they cross into Egypt, they see food everywhere. You wouldn't think they've ever had a bad harvest, because the people here are feasting. They hear that everyone must go to the governor, who grants permission to buy food. They make it to his palace and they realize how great this man is. He is the one in charge of all of Egypt. Pharaoh doesn't worry about anything because this governor rules for him. Okay, let's show our respect so that we may gain his favor, Judah whispers to his brothers. When they enter the throne room, they bow down to pay him homage. He acknowledges their existence and states through an interpreter, "Our grain is for the Egyptians. Where are you from?" We've traveled from Canaan to buy food for our families." This man's cold eyes fall on him. "You are spies! You want to raid Egypt and steal from us!" No, they object. "We're all just brothers. We are honest. We have money with us. We want to buy food." "No, you are spies! If you are all brothers, is your father still alive? How old is he? Do you have any other brothers?" Yes, we are honest. Our father is alive. We have one younger brother who stays with our father at all times. We had one other brother, but he is no longer with us. They state with shame in their voice. "I will test you and see if you are telling the truth. One of you will stay as my prisoner. The rest, go home and return with your younger brother. If I do not see your younger brother, I will know that you are spies, and you will all be my prisoners." Then his guards grab Simeon, one of the crazy ones. They tie him up and drag him away. Reuben, never taking responsibility for his own actions, points to Judah and says, "We are being judged for the evil you did to your brother." The rest pay the governor's servant and go to load their animals. As they are packing their donkeys, the governor himself comes and gives them extra provisions for their journey. When he is satisfied that they are provided for, he leaves. The man who was just harsh to them and stole their brother made sure that they were provided for. Once again, they lost a brother. Judah's heart is broke. Yes, Simeon is crazy, but he's still his brother. This will not go over well with father either. As they stop to rest for the night, Judah opens his sack to check the grain. The money that he paid for the grain is still sitting there. Is he being blessed or cursed, he wonders. His brothers discuss the money and believe the governor is trapping them to prove that they are spies. Reuben is sure that they are being punished for what they did to Joseph, but Judah is unsure. He thanks God for his provisions and prays that God gives them favor with the governor. Have you ever struggled with something? Like losing your temper when things don't go your way, or cutting others down to make yourself look better. Then you realize your sin, you repent, and God changes you. Your temper slowly lessens, or you no longer find joy in belittling those around you. This is what happened to Judah. God changed who he is, so he can stand up for his younger brother instead of hating him. When the brothers return home from Egypt, they tell Jacob how they were treated by the Egyptian governor, how he kept Simeon and demanded to see Benjamin, Jacob's favorite, as proof that they have no malcontent. When Jacob hears this, he cries out, "2 of my sons have been taken from me, and now you want me to lose another? No! You will not take Benjamin to Egypt." The months go by, and their food supply from Egypt slowly dwindles. So Jacob asks his sons to return to Egypt for more food. However, Judah stands firm. "We will not go unless Benjamin goes with us. This is the only way we will get to see the governor, and the only way he will let Simeon return home. I will personally look out for Benjamin, and I will make sure no harm comes to him." Jacob finally agrees, packing the brothers' sacks with double the amount of money to return the payment for the grain that they previously bought, and adding a few more gifts just to show goodwill towards the governor. When they return to Egypt, the guards at the door of the palace immediately stop them. Reuben whispers to Judah, "They plan to kill us. That is why they're not letting us enter the palace. Let us flee while we can." Then the messenger comes. "Sir, last time we found money in our sacks after we left. So we brought more to repay you. Honestly, we didn't steal any of it." "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied. "I received your money. You need not be afraid. I have come to inform you that you will dine with the governor today. He will meet you at noon." So they are led to the great banqueting hall, and here they prepare their gifts for him, certain that they will only have one chance to show their innocence before they are falsely accused and killed. However, to their astonishment, they are not questioned at all this time. Instead, Simeon is returned, and they are given a great feast. As good as Judah's meal is, he looks over to Benjamin, and he sees that Benjamin has twice the amount of food. He knows that this should bother him, that his younger brothers are always favored, but he has also learned that jealousy only brings sorrow. So instead, he rejoices with his brothers. After they feast, their donkeys are loaded, and they begin their journey home. All of them this time. What's that noise?" Benjamin asked Judah while walking home. "There is a rumbling, and it's coming closer." Then they see the governor's men. They are surrounded by soldiers. "You stole the governor's cup! After all of his generosity towards you, you treat him this way?" We would never do such a thing," Judah replies. But his words fall on deaf ears as the soldiers cut open the bags of grain. The first bag, empty. The second, the third, the fifth. Then they come to Benjamin's bags and cut them open. Amongst the kernels of grain, there is a shiny, golden cup. "You thief!" the captain shouts as the men seize Benjamin. "You will be the governor's slave for such treachery. The rest of you, go free." "No!" Judah cries. "Let me be his slave instead. This will kill my father." But his words are of no use. They return to the palace where the governor is waiting. The governor angrily says, "What have you done?" Judah falls on his face. What can I say? We are being punished for our sin against our brother long ago. We have come back to be your slaves. Just let the youngest go free." "No, I would never do such a thing. Only the guilty will be punished." Then Judah looks up with tears in his eyes If you enslave the boy, my father will die. His other brother is no more. And my father's life is tied to this boy. Please, please let me take his place. Accuse me, imprison me, enslave me. Just let him go free. To their amazement, there are no more harsh words that come from the governor's mouth. He takes off his hat, revealing his face to them. I am Joseph, your brother. Do not be afraid, because God is with me. You sold me as a slave to Egypt, but God sent me here so that you will not starve in this time of famine. I see that God has also changed you. You are no longer the jealous brothers who are willing to betray one another. Go home and return with our father, that we may live together in unity. Thank you for watching. Consider liking, subscribing, or sharing this video with a friend.